On December 10, 2025, the Tibetan community in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, together with multiple human rights and religious groups, held a World Human Rights Day march and demonstration. The procession set off from the lakeside at Palais Wilson and marched to Place des Nations. Along the way, participants held banners and chanted slogans such as At the rally, a Tibetan representative pointed out that more than 1 million Tibetan children have been separated from their parents and forcibly placed in state-run boarding schools, in which their language, culture, and religious beliefs are being systematically and brutally stripped away. Long-term surveillance, arbitrary detention, torture, and abuse are not only serious human rights violations, they also constitute a destruction of Tibetan culture and religious faith. In her remarks, Zhang Shuting, a Christian from the Church of Almighty God, described the brutal persecution her church has endured since its establishment. Based on incomplete statistics, between 1991 and November 2025, at least 510,000 CAG Christians were arrested, and 314 were persecuted to death. Since 2017 alone, 63,902 CAG Christians have been sentenced to prison, and more than 80,000 have been subjected to torture and violent brainwashing. During interviews, several Christians said that the CCP has long been hostile toward religion and has imposed high-pressure crackdowns on house churches. Believers are arbitrarily arrested, tortured, and forced to sign the 3 statements renouncing their faith. Those who refuse to do so face imprisonment or even death. They even said that in China, there is no genuine freedom of belief, and even attending routine religious gatherings have become extremely difficult.
中共它这种无人机、电子眼这种高档的这种监控设备，它是专门跟踪现神的人的，甚至还有查户口、查天然气、暂住证等等各种理由入户调查现神的人。让人更可恨的是，他利用小学生来调查家里有没有信神的人，他是想方设法要把信神人好找着，然后一网打尽。我们在中国聚会，真的是每天都提心吊胆的，稍不小心我们下一秒就被抓了。你说中共这不太邪门了吗？
The reality is even more brutal. In mainland China in 2025, influenza A, COVID-19, and other plagues are rampant, while fires and construction site accidents occur with alarming frequency across the country. Cities have fallen eerily silent, hospitals are overwhelmed, and unemployment, hunger, and despair loom over everyday life. Yet the CCP remains indifferent to people's suffering. Instead of relief or care, citizens are met with surveillance cameras and police batons. Party leaders obsess over fantasies of living to 150 years old, while organ trafficking has become a horrifying reality. Amid economic collapse and widespread hardship, the CCP's repression of religious belief has only grown more brutal. Taking the Church of Almighty God as just one example, at least 15,000 members were arrested between January and November 2025. This is a regime that crushes human rights and destroys freedom of belief. Its inhumanity and blood-soaked brutality are nothing short of shocking. For more than 70 years, the CCP has inflicted harm on the country and suffering on its people, consistently treating religious believers and dissidents as its greatest enemies. The arrest and persecution of Christians have never ceased. Even after Christians flee China, many are still unable to escape the CCP's pursuit, surveillance, and threats, leaving them without true freedom or peace. In Geneva, protesters stood against the cold wind. Every chant they raised was a denunciation of the CCP's trampling of human rights and freedom. On the same day, calls for freedom and human rights were also heard in Austria. Under an overcast sky in Vienna, Austria, Tibetans, Christians from the Church of Almighty God, and members of other religious and civil society groups gathered outside the Chinese embassy in Austria. Holding banners and placards, they took part in a human rights and peace protest. The protesters called on the Chinese government to immediately end its persecution and urged the international community to pay attention and offer support. They chanted slogans such as,
"No human rights! Who is the killer?
We demand human rights."
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. 77 years on, these opening words of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are still being repeatedly chanted today in front of the Chinese embassy in Austria, because in China, there is still no genuine freedom or belief. Protesters stress that human rights are not merely words on paper, but fundamental rights that must be defended and upheld in practice.
77 Jahre ist es her, dass die Allgemeine Erklärung der Menschenrechte das Licht der Welt erblickte. 77 Jahre sollten eigentlich lang genug sein, um die Werte, die in dieser Erklärung verpackt sind, auch umzusetzen. Und zwar weltweit umzusetzen.
Multiple speakers pointed out that for more than 70 years under the CCP rule, the suppression of religious groups, including Christians and Catholics, has never ceased. Temples, churches, and other places of worship have been closed or demolished. Bibles have been burned or altered, and religious symbols such as crosses have been forcibly removed. Religious leaders and ordinary believers have faced large-scale arrests, torture, and harsh prison sentences, with some even losing their lives to torture and abuse. Among the crowd stood a group of Chinese Christians who had endured persecution by the CCP and were forced to flee abroad. Their experiences show that religious persecution is not an abstract term, but a concrete and brutal reality. Among them, the experience of a Christian named Lin Hai stands as a stark example of this persecution. He said his younger brother was tortured by police, with handcuffs cutting deeply into his wrists, as he was suspended from a window for 12 hours straight. His younger sister was also arrested and beaten, then forced to flee her home, and has not been heard from since. Lin Shu was pursued in China because of his faith and was forced to flee overseas. Worse still, the CCP publicly posted his photos and personal information, along with those of other Christians, on the internet. As a result, they continue to face pressure and threats, with no peace in sight. Another Christian, Xiao Han, was arrested for her faith and endured interrogations and psychological trauma. The protests that day came to an end in the cold wind, but the voices raised in front of the embassy at the Place des Nations remained in the hearts of the participants, inspiring them to continue defending human rights and freedom. This rally was more than just an event, it was a powerful condemnation of the CCP's persecution. As long as the CCP's authoritarian rule continues, religious beliefs will not escape suppression and abuse. The country will find no lasting peace, and its people will not obtain genuine human rights and freedom. Stop persecution. Restore our freedom. This is a public outcry against the CCP's persecution, a defense of human rights, and a firm commitment to freedom of belief.